Question be now put.
He's under instruction.
I'll go with Honi Harawira.
Mr. Chairman, huri rona kia ora tātou katoa te whare. First of all, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to put to bed this ridiculous story from the Labour Party that the reason why they passed the Foreshore and Seabed Act was because they thought that National was going to do something racist. I mean, that's got to be the biggest joke, if it wasn't so tragic, that I've heard in a long, long time. I mean, it wasn't National that said that they were going to take away the foreshore and seabed, it was Labour. They said they were going to do it, and they went ahead and did it. So I think we need to clear that up straight away. And thanks also to the Labour Party for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this bill during the second reading and hopefully have the opportunity to speak on it again in the third reading. To the Minister, Mr. Finlayson, I'd like to congratulate him for doing a good job on this bill. I think he's been very enthusiastic. I think he's been very open. I think he's been willing to travel and willing to listen to people's views. But I think that the real problem for the Minister is that he doesn't actually support this bill. The Minister doesn't support this bill because he knows that it does not lead to justice for Māori. The Minister does not support this bill because he would dearly have loved the opportunity for Māori to have gotten tupuna title in terms of this foreshore and seabed. The Minister does not support this bill because he went around and said to Māori groups and to the iwi leadership in particular that if they could not get their foreshore and seabed back through the courts, that he would leave the door open for them to come and see him and negotiate the possibility for them to get their foreshore and seabed back by discussion with him. And now something else has happened. That deal was changed, and that in fact was the deal that the Māori Party supported. One, court, and if not court, negotiation with the Minister. Well, that deal with the Minister morphed into a deal in Parliament, and now I understand today that that deal has morphed into nothing. That deal is now completely off the table, and that the only deal left is the court deal. And that's the problem, I think, here, Mr. Chairman, is that the court deal is no deal. Because just because the door has been opened to the courtroom, it doesn't mean to say that justice is available to Māori. Because when the Minister himself says that Māori must prove full and exclusive use and occupation of their foreshore and seabed without substantial interruption, and according to tikanga, he's setting a test that is so high that no whānau and no hapu can even afford to contemplate going to court. It is that difficult to prove. And I think Mr. Parker himself raised the notion of local body involvement on the foreshore and seabed, which would negate that ability. Others have mentioned the fact that land was taken illegally, but it doesn't apply in this situation. That still means that Māori don't have that ability to get that foreshore and seabed back. I pick up on the comments made by Metiria Ture about the racism implicit in this bill, and I understand that people have been concerned about me mentioning the fact that it is a racist piece of legislation only 15 times in my speech during the second reading. Well, that's because it is. And unfortunately, it's also because the Minister also thinks it is. The Minister himself does not agree that things should be imposed upon Māori that are not going to be imposed upon others in this country in terms of the way in which the foreshore and seabed is managed. And in terms of this issue about mana, and I see that the word mana is used freely during the bill and in particular during the preamble, I note that in terms of sovereignty, in terms of control of primary minerals, in terms of control of access, and in terms of access itself to resources, all of those statutory authorities still remain with the Crown. So there's no mana, because those issues are elements of mana. So they are still wrapped up in terms of Crown ownership, and that, of course, is the issue that Māori were fighting against. And while the title has been changed nominally from Crown to no title. In fact, the statutory authorities to all of those still, Mr. Chairman,
Honi Harawira.
the statutory authorities to all of those still remain with the Crown. Mr. Speaker, I've heard often that issues of this nature should have broad support. Clearly Labour's didn't have broad support, but neither does this one. Neither does this one by the National Party. In fact, this one doesn't even have the support of the general Pākehā population, let alone the Māori population in this country, Mr. Chairman. I think that that's a concern, or should be a concern to the Minister. I do know, for example, that this bill is not what Māori people want. In fact, of the 72 submissions which came in for Māori organisations, whānau, hapu, iwi, marae, Māori organisations, Māori collectives, there were 72. And only one of those 72 submissions supported this bill. Only one of 72. You could hardly say that that's even broad-based Māori support. It's not, this piece of legislation is not even what all of the Māori MPs in this House want. I know that Mr. Quinn, for example, does not believe that this bill is going to achieve what it is that his people would like to see in the foreshore and seabed. Because you told me so just outside the House a few minutes ago, Mr. Quinn. Thank you very much. I'd also like to say, Mr. Chairman, that this bill is not even what the Māori Party wants. And I'll quote from one of the co-leaders on this particular piece of legislation. If negotiations had been just, fair and honourable, the outcome would have been different. I'll repeat that again, in terms of whether the Māori Party supports this bill or not. One of the co-leaders said in her question and answer video on this particular piece of legislation, if the negotiations had been just, fair and moral, the outcome would have been different. Well, clearly, this bill is unjust, unfair and immoral. And how the Māori Party can say that this is their bill when it's unfair, unjust and immoral is beyond me, Mr. Chairman. And it's for all of those reasons, Mr. Chairman, that I think we need to be considering the proposal which was made by one Moana Jackson, a simple proposal that I know that the Minister also liked, and I'll come to that at the end of my kōrero. But when the Māori Party says that this is their bill, I cannot understand why they say that when the principle of tūpuna title that the Māori Party wanted in the bill was summarily dismissed early in the process. And I can't understand why the Māori Party is saying that this is their bill when even the Māori Party membership does not support this bill, Mr. Chairman. And when the Māori Party is saying that this is their bill, do they hear the submissions which were submitted to the Māori Affairs Select Committee, which said that this bill fails to properly recognise and provide for the mana of Papua Niue, that it continues the original confiscation via vesting in the common space, that it sets the use and occupation tests too high, that it limits the contents of a customary marine title, that it introduces a costly, adversarial and complicated court process, that it remains discriminatory to Māori, and that it continues to breach Te Tiriti o Waitangi, Tikanga Māori, common law principles and international human rights standards, including the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Mr. Chairman, Moana Jackson suggested a very simple solution to this problem, and it was this: repeal the 2004 Foreshore and Seabed Act, because everybody wants that, including Labour. So if you want broad support, Mr. Minister, there it is. Repeal the 2004 Foreshore and Seabed Act. But give and then put a moratorium on the foreshore and seabed so that Māori can take 2 years to discuss this in the way that's going to lead to a solution which will achieve broad-based support and still achieve the kinds of principles which are important to Māori in terms of mana in terms of tikanga Māori and in terms of kaupapa. Me mihi atu ki a koe, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. We do not te whare, kia ora tātou katoa.